Good afternoon, everybody. This will be a really quick video, I think, because we covered some pretty basic stuff today in class. But for those of you that were not here today for Lesson 5, we covered a few things. First, we really emphasized the birth of the Joint Force as we currently know it, and that began with the Goldwater-Nichols Act of 1986. That really created a number of changes in the Department of Defense, primarily by establishing the President as the singular Commander-in-Chief, followed by civilian leadership underneath for the military operations for the Secretary of Defense. And then that splits in really two ways, an operational chain of command and an administrative chain of command. So the Secretary of Defense has command authority over all of those organizations. When he is looking to execute wartime operations or demand combat, he looks to his combatant commanders. We talked about the combatant commanders really being categorized in a couple ways. There's the functional combatant commands, which are things like strategic command, transportation command, space command, cyber command. Those are the commands that really, they transcend geographic borders, and they have a very specific function that they're responsible for. And then we also talked about the combatant commands, which we will continue to talk about as the class progresses primarily. And those are really ones that are bound by geographic regions. Those regions are defined every couple years, and they may change and flex and flow a little bit here and there, but for the large part, they've been pretty fixed over the last several years. We have Central Command, Indo-PACOM, or CENTCOM, Indo-PACOM, Southcom, Northcom. There's a whole list of those in the readings. And those are the geographic combatant commands that we work with. Today we asked the groups really that were in place there to identify and isolate a singular combatant command that they are going to work with throughout the semester. We talked about how we're going to begin to brief a little bit each day and the expectations for those briefings. We'll give it our first shot. Not on lesson 7, so this coming Friday we'll exercise that. Excuse me, and then that's the operational chain of command. Then we talked about the administrative chain of command, also managed by the Secretary of Defense, and that flows down through the secretaries of the respective services. In our case, it'd be the Secretary of the Air Force, of course. And that guidance through Barbara Barrett then trickles down to our current Chief of Staff, and that would be General Brown. And the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, just like the other service chiefs, his primary function is really just to organize, train, and equip the Air Force such that it is ready and willing and capable of shifting over to the operational, being chopped, if you will, snipped from the Air Force and given to a combatant commander to go execute wartime operations. So General Brown's primary function is to make sure that we are trained, we are organized in such a way that we can fight effectively, and we have all the equipment we have to make our job easy and to be effective against the adversaries of tomorrow. So that's the organizational and administrative chain of command, or operational and administrative chains of command. We also talked very briefly about the Joint Task Force, or the JTF, and how they're designed. And the key takeaway, these are all in the slides. I just posted those to Blackboard. The crux of that information is really all of the different domains have a commander that is in charge of those respective domains called component commanders. We have the JFAC, Joint Forces Air Component Commander, JFAC. We have the JFLC, the Joint Forces Land Component Commander, pronounced the JFMIC, Joint Forces Maritime, all in charge of all the sea domain. And last but not least, we have the JFSOC, Joint Forces Special Operations Commander. And they're in charge of their respective domains. So all air power operations going on in CENTCOM in both Iraq and Afghanistan, those are all managed by a single guy or gal over in CENTCOM. He would be the JFAC. He manages the air, deconflicts everything, makes sure the assets are in place as required. And really the last primary thing we talked about is kind of the Joint Task Force staff organizations, and you will see this as lieutenants when you get out there and commission in a few years. That's really the J1, J2, J3, all the way up to the J6. And those are functionally offices, if you will, that the commander has to leverage various tasks. So J1 would be personnel, J2 is intel, J3 operations, J4 logistics, J5 would be plans and programs, and then finally J6 is all the communications, computers and comms and whatnot. So you will see those as you get into the active duty, and you'll see them in the Air Force as well. But the nomenclature would be, instead of J1, it would be A1 or A2, A3, etc. So really it was kind of a rudimentary lesson that just had a lot of facts, figures, flow charts, but really moving forward, as we start talking about the Army and the Navy and the Marines in the coming days, we really need to understand how our combatant commanders are positioned to fight. They are the war fighters, and the services individually are the ones that have to really make sure that the services are ready to fight when called upon. So moving forward on lesson 6, we'll be talking about the U.S. Army, and really the objectives are pretty clear. The lesson objectives are listed in the syllabus. Excuse me, it's pretty rudimentary. Understand what the Army's primary function is, and understand kind of the motions of the various brigade combat teams. So that's what we'll talk about on, I guess, Wednesday of this week. So that's all we got. This is me coming from my basement. Thanks for your patience and all your help in giving us guidance on how this class is going or what some other ideas might be. We'll look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday. Thanks.